Hello folks, this is Zack Cimini here. Thanks for watching on YouTube, Not Just a Game channel, and subscribing to my podcast, or your first time listener, so please subscribe to the podcast. We've got it on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podomatic, several podcasts out there. My whole thing is to help you with sports gambling. I'm going to discuss a couple things just right off the bat in the NFL, which is still my number one sport. Last week I did go 0-2. Week 2 is always going to be a problem for me. It's been always long term. Sometimes I go 1-2, but I went 0-2 on the premium card. I actually sent my winner to Sportsline with Green Bay, but that doesn't count on my record for the people that are paying online. So we look at that. I'm 2-3 overall in the NFL, is right where I'm usually am. College football also one game below 500, and for me, I see everything visually, so right off the bat, first couple of weeks of the season, of course, I'm going to be right around that 500 mark, as I need to see those teams a little bit more to get a true perspective on what I'm working with. So expect the same thing as the last 4, 5, 6 years for the mainstream access that I've had on these websites. Once October hits is really when those wins start piling up. In November, the same thing. So I should be in that same plus 15, plus 17 range in both sports. And then we'll see what happens with basketball this year. I'm hoping to have success in both the NBA and college basketball. But for the NFL, I'm going to give out a couple of plays in college football here for the Thursday, Friday slate. But in the NFL, a couple of things to keep in mind. A lot of big spreads out there. We saw what New England did against Miami, so the spreads are going to keep growing with the way the Patriots are playing phenomenally defensively, and offensively they're able to throw the ball all over the place. They're running the ball okay with Sonny Michel. They just have great coaching. You're seeing the lopsided effect in the NFL right now. A lot of changeover with quarterbacks, injuries, and whatnot. So this is going to be something that's going to be a reoccurrence on a week-to-week basis. And for me, I don't even look at double-digit spreads. That's been a rule of thumb for me. So just because it's not a 10 or 12 or 13 or 14 point spread, now that it's 21, 22, it's the same thing for me. I'm not looking at it something I'm going to bypass. There's still 13 other games on the board that are within my range, and that's how I focus on that. But in the NFL this week, there's something I wanted to throw out there with Teddy Bridgewater, former Minnesota Vikings quarterback, and now the Saints starter for temporary with Drew Brees out. Keep in mind, he was a starter for the Minnesota Vikings and has faced the Seattle Seahawks team multiple times, I think 2 or 3 times. One year they played in the regular season and the playoffs. That was the one where Blair Walsh missed that field goal and the Vikings should have won easily. That's something to keep in mind. Teddy Bridgewater, sometimes you need that confident game to get you going, and he has that confidence. He's played the Seahawks team several times, so that's something you should factor in. And then look at the Baltimore Ravens and Kansas City Chiefs. I'm someone that always harps on line familiarity, and it can be whenever, as long as you remember the matchup. So this one was probably 8 years ago when Baltimore and KC played in the playoffs, 2011, wild card round, and the Ravens blew out the Chiefs. And there's a lot of people that remember that. I think there was a 7-point line that time on the Ravens, and obviously they cover that with ease. Now we flip sides here. So think about that. When I assess an NFL board, I like to look at line familiarity and just see what's the difference between that team, that matchup, and flip side of that spread. So I'm not giving out a play on that, but if you follow the NFL like I do year in, year out, you should remember that matchup, and you should be able to break that down a little bit better than you would a game this early in the year without the key information. So let's get into it. These podcasts are going to be short and sweet. I want to talk on 2 plays that aren't going to make my premium board, but I'm going to attack them for this podcast and for my YouTube channel. With Houston and Tulane. Tulane comes in as a 4.5 point favorite, probably get up to 5 by kickoff on Thursday, and I think you should take Tulane here. This is a Houston team that's had this fourth quarter advantage against the spread against Oklahoma, and then last week against the Washington State Huskies. They're able to, it seems like that spread's going to slip away, and then they're able to get that backdoor cover or get a little bit of momentum as they did against Oklahoma and get that cover. But this week, we see a dwindled down line against a Tulane team that's kind of unknown, ATS kind of unknown what they can do. But there's a reason why Houston remains an underdog. And just because the line is smaller doesn't mean that's not more advantageous for the better. So I think this is the week you can jump on Tulane and probably get yourself an early win against ATS this week in college football. And the other one, just look at Friday. I love the Pac-12 on Fridays. It'll probably take me another maybe 2 or 3 weeks to throw this on my premium card, Pac-12 Friday night. But this week I'll give it out. And I think you can look at USC +4 against Utah. Utah obviously dominating. They have that strong defense. They blew out this same BYU team that USC lost to. So that's something that's kind of a variance in that spread. So you look at USC. There's differences with what they have capability of doing. We saw Keaton Slovis struggle with throwing the short ball against BYU, so Utah's going to use that to their advantage. But USC, they can get him out. They can scramble him a little bit. I think they're going to look at getting that ball down the field a little bit more, and that should bode to their advantage. USC back at home. They played well at home this year. I think you look at Utah, they've always been that team under Kyle Willingham that has the capability but underachieves, whether it be early in the season, middle of the season, or late in the season, and they just never live up to their capability. So I think it's going to happen again. Maybe they squeeze this out late by a field goal or something like that, but I would grab USC plus the points. And like I said, it's on that key matchup. Both teams haven't played BYU. Utah blew out that BYU team, and obviously USC struggled, and it was just recent, last week, that they lost to BYU. So those are a couple of things. Please subscribe if you enjoy this. I'm going to try to do my best on giving out content all season long, even through college basketball in the NBA. Thanks for following.